say.
Sydney just didn't like the way he was saying that. You can do it with an American accent, you know. Good evening, friends, and welcome. It's wonderful to have you here this evening to honor Dr. Sydney Berger. It's not often I use that whole name. More often it was more like Sydney or Sid, or to most of us really in this building, Doc.
Yes.
Doc, in whose honor I made sure to wear a shirt from a thrift store. And I'm happy to say that his Doc, who left us too soon, played many roles. He was a husband and a father, a scholar,
An actor,
A director.
a producer, a teacher,
a mentor, a friend. Dr. Sydney Berger's life covered the 7 ages of man, as described in Act 2 of Shakespeare's As You Like It. The first age began on the Lower East Side of New York City on January 25th, 1936.
At first, the infant, mewling and puking in a nurse's office. Sidney Louis Berger was the first of 2 sons born to Samuel and Pauline Berger. Raised in their Yiddishkeit household, Sid's first language was Yiddish. He then learned English to the sound of his immigrant parents' Polish accents.
At home in Brooklyn, New York City's melting pot, Sydney Berger developed an ear for the tones and cadences of the mixed ethnic groups he found on the streets of Brooklyn, which was his playground. This fostered his fine ear and a lifelong appreciation of the music of language.
then the whining schoolboy with his satchel and shining morning face, whining every morning. Sydney Berger was educated in Brooklyn at Erasmus Ball High School, 3 years ahead of Barbara Streisand. He then attended Brooklyn College, where he earned his Bachelor of Arts in Theater. And in 1958, he left New York to pursue his master's and doctorate at the University of Kansas. And there he met the love of his life, Sandra Hopkins.
And then the lover, sighing like furnace, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. In 1963, they married. The newlyweds moved to East Lansing, Michigan, where Doc was appointed Director of Graduate Studies in Theater at Michigan State University. In 1965, the Bergers welcomed baby Jennifer, and so began the 4th age.
Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded to the part, quick, jealous in honor, sudden and quick to quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. Well, Doc was never a soldier, but he did soldier on. In 1969, the Bergers left Michigan and traveled south to Houston, where Doc accepted his position as chair of the University of Houston's drama department. Accompanying this move was Doc's first hiree to the new department, Dr. Tony Collins.
In the fall of 1969, in 1969, Sydney Berger.
Do it, Tony. Okay.
Sid Berger and I headed south. We left the frosty plains of Michigan for the more salubrious coast of Texas. Our wives had come down from earlier to find us suitable habitation. So he's driving some big Toyota Corona or something. I'm in a right-hand drive TR4 Triumph. Anyway, we left Michigan and we're heading south. In Indiana, this Triumph, had a flat tire, the back right tire. And Sydney, fortunately, was behind me. You know, this long before cell phones were even common. So Sydney stops. We go up to Gas City, Indiana, is the exit. There's a garage. The guy comes down with the regular, picks up the back of the Triumph. We tow it up there. They're going to change the tire because the tire was flat. See, and they're going to give me a new inner tube and all this. But the wheel won't come off the car. The Triumphs had a funny way of attaching with splines and little things to screw on. It was rusted on. So there's a young man from the garage under there with a sledgehammer banging on the wheel. And I saw, me being stranded in Gas City, Indiana. And Sydney, who would never, with all of his talents and gifts, Sydney would never, ever think or say that he has technical talent. But he said, well, couldn't you change the tire with it still up on the car? And these mechanics looked at this retired former tech director and he said, well, yeah. So the guy got the tool, broke the tire loose from the rim, pulled the old tube out, took the new one in, aired it up, and away we went. Well, about a half hour later, or whatever it was, we got in Indianapolis. This is before the interstate kids. And we got separated in the rush hour traffic. Oh, we'll see Sydney again for 2 days. At the beautiful Robinwood Hotel on I-10 and that's before it started coming on. Nothing would do but we go down to the beach to see the, we're coming from Michigan, we want to see the ocean. So we tear down the Galveston and we're sitting in the water and the water's about up here and Sydney has his glasses on. And the water came splash and away went his glasses. And he had to, he either had a prescription or I don't know, he had a new pair in a day or two. But he lost his glasses. He wasn't going to let the Gulf of Mexico defeat him. He was here to Houston to stay. And aren't we glad he did?
Yeah.
The Berger family expanded in 1973 with the birth of son Eric, and so began the fifth age of Sydney Berger.
The chair. Before round belly with good cape and lined, with eyes severe and beard a formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances, and so he played his part. As chair of the University of Houston Drama Department, Doc had a full load of classes, directed one show every academic year, while building the home here at the Wortham. The building opened in 1977 with Dame Judy Dish in attendance.
When he came in 1969 to the drama department, he was my instructor. I came back February 1990 to be secretary in the School of Theater and Dance. It took me a very long time to not call him Dr. Berger. And our offices were open, which led to his belief that the theater department should be a family and should be together and should be open. But he wasn't always serious. In fact, most of the time he was not. We had such a fabulous relationship. We could talk. We could disagree and agree to disagree. I was considered his work wife. I guess at the end of my third year, I called him Doc all the time. I could never call him Cindy.
Finding Houston. On finding Houston a little bit dull in August, Doc founded the Houston Shakespeare Festival in Herman Park. Not only was he the producer of the festival, he also directed one show each summer. And in fact, this coming summer is the 40th anniversary of the Houston Shakespeare Festival. Doc's final production for HSF was Much Ado About Nothing.
Where is the lady I must claim upon?
But they was she, and I do give you her.
Well, then she is mine. Sweet. Let me look at your face.
No, that you shall not until you take her hand before this friar and swear to marry her.
Let you give me your hand in front of this holy friar. I'm your husband if you'll have me.
When I lived, I was your other wife. When you loved, you were my other husband.
Another hero.
Nothing certain, sir. One hero died defiled, but I do live. And surely as I live, I am a maid.
The former hero that was dead.
She died, my lord, but whilst her slander lived,
All this amazement can I qualify, when after that the holy rites are ended, I will tell you largely of fair hero's death. Meantime, let wonder seem familiar, and to the chapel let us present.
Soft and fair, friar. Which is Beatrice?
I answer that name. What is your will?
Do not you love me?
Why, no. No more than reason.
Why, then your uncle and the prince and Claudio have been deceived. They swore you did.
Do not you love me?
Oh, no. No more than reason.
Why, then my cousin Margaret and Ursula are much deceived, for they did swear you did.
They swore you were almost sick for me.
They swore you were well nigh dead for me.
'Tis no such matter. Then you do not love me.
No, truly. But in friendly recompense.
come, cousin, I am sure you love the gentleman.
And I'll be sworn upon it that he loves her, for here is a letter written in his own hand, fashioned to Beatrice.
And here's another, writ in my cousin's hand, stolen from her pocket, containing her affections unto Benedict.
A miracle. Here's our own hands against our hearts. Come, I will have thee. By this light, I take thee for pity.
I would not deny you. But by this good day I yield upon great persuasion, and partly to save your life. For I was told you in a consumption.
I'll stop your mouth.
And how now, Benedict, the married man?
I'll tell thee what, Prince. A college of whipcrackers cannot flout me out of my humor. Dost thou think I care for a satire or epigram? No. If a man will be beaten with brains, he shall wear nothing handsome about him. In brief, since I do purpose to marry, I will say nothing to any purpose that the world can say against it, and therefore never flout at me for anything I have said against it. For man is a giddy thing, and this is my conclusion.
In 1980, Sydney and Brenda Dubé co-founded the Children's Theatre Festival, and for 28 summers, Doc directed his students to packed houses of delighted children. He collaborated with composers such as Rob Landis, Charles Strauss, and two-time Tony Award winner Jerry Bach, best known for Fiddler on the Roof. Sydney, in fact, directed Fiddler on the Roof for Dunphy's Dinner Theatre with Chesley Crone as Hobble. And I understand that Sydney stood in for Tevye one night and he blew them all away.
Oh, what a melancholy choice this is, wanting home, wanting him, closing my heart to every hope but his, leaving the home I love. There where my heart was settled long ago, I must go, I must go. Who could imagine I'd be wandering so far from the home I love? Yet there with my love, I'm home. When Doc received the Lifetime Achievement Award from Theater Under the Stars, Jerry Bach flew in from New York as a surprise to present the award.
Doc had many musical theater accomplishments, directing productions both here and abroad, including USO tours through the Defense Department. With Theo Finiti, he wrote musical scores for stage and screen. Doc wrote the book and lyrics for the opera, Last Temptation of Christ.
Music begins in total darkness, seeming to signal a lonely pain. As it continues, it becomes a slowly increasing sound of anguish, growing until it seems as if it will tear the heavens apart. Shafts of light suddenly transcend the stage as we hear the voices of the villagers, anguish reaching up through sleep.
Their collaboration lasted 15 years and ended with Where is the Sun?, a requiem in commemoration of those who perished in the Holocaust. At Theo Finiti's funeral, Doc delivered the eulogy, closing with the following song.
Thy sun shall no more go down, neither shall the moon withdraw itself. And the Lord shall be unto thee an everlasting light, and the days of thy mourning shall be ended.
Without a doubt, Sidney Berger's true passion was Shakespeare. In January of 1991, Doc and Doug Cook co-founded the Shakespeare Theater Association of America, holding its first annual conference right here at UH, in fact. The organization was established to provide a forum for theaters whose central activity is the production of Shakespeare's plays. According to Doc's friend and colleague, Patrick Spottiswoode, Director of Education for Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London, hundreds of thousands of students, actors, directors, managing directors, and audiences should feel indebted to Sidney for what he fought for and achieved. He achieved it with a mischievous sense of humor. His smile and grin had a heady mix of Puck, Falstaff, and Iago. Not a bad list on a resume.
And what's he then that says I play the villain? Well, the advice is free I give, and honest. Probable to thinking, and indeed the course to win them o'er again. For 'tis most easy the inclining Desdemona to subdue in any honest suit. She's framed as fruitful as the three elements. And for her to win the Moor, were to renounce his baptism, or seals and symbols of redeemed sin. His soul is so infected to her love that she may make, unmake, do as she list, even as her appetite shall play the god with his weak function. How am I then a villain to counsel Cassio to this parallel course, directly to his good? Divinity of hell. When devils will their blackest sins put on, they do suggest it first with heavenly shows, as I do now. For whiles this honest fool plies Desdemona to repair his fortune, and she for him pleads strongly to the Moor, pour this pestilence into his ear, that she repeals him for her own body's lust, and by how much she strives to do him good, she shall undo her credit with the Moor. And so will I turn her virtue into pitch, and out of her own goodness make the net that shall enmesh them all.
Sidney Berger was the first president of the Shakespeare Theatre Association of America, an organization that still thrives internationally today. Doc also served on the board of Sam Wanamaker's Globe Center project in London.
Doc's beginning Shakespeare classes were always filled to capacity, making his students beg for more advanced bard classes.
Here's some of Doc's favorite monologues of Henry V.
I love and miss Sidney Berger, and I was always amazed by his depth of knowledge and passion for Shakespeare. The last time I had the privilege to see him, he asked me what I was up to, and I told him I was going to start rehearsal for Henry V, and I was going to need his coaching. And without blinking an eye, he began to recite. Oh, for a muse of fire, that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention, a kingdom for a stage, princes to act, and monarchs to behold the swelling scene. Then should the warlike Harry, like himself, assume the port of Mars, and at his heels, leashed in like hounds, should famine, sword, and fire crouch for employment. But, pardon, and gentle as all the flat, unraised spirits that have dared upon this unworthy scaffold to bring forth so great an object, can this cockpit hold the vasty fields of France? Or may we cram within this wooden O the very cast that did affright the air at Agincourt? Pardon. And let us, ciphers to this great account, on your imaginary forces work.
Hamlet.
What a piece of work is a man. How noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form and moving, how express and admirable. In action, how like an angel. In apprehension, how like a god. The beauty of the world. The paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me. No, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so.
Neighbors,
Changing her.
lost.
Have I heard of you, my Lord Rue, before I saw you? And the world's large town proclaims you as a man, replete with mocks, full of comparisons and wounding flouts, which you, on all estates, will execute, that lie within the mercy of your wit. To weed this wormwood from your fruitful brain,
I never thought to win me, and without the rich, I am not to be won. You shall, this 12-month term, from day to day, visit the speechless sick, and still converse with groaning wretches. And your task shall be, with all the fierce endeavor of your wit, to bring the pained impotent to smile.
Doc's store was always open, making himself accessible to students who needed one-on-one encouragement or help with plays and school projects.
Sidney Berger understood his students' deep passion for the theater. He understood this so well that he tenaciously and steadily brought well-known artists to the School of Theater and Dance. Among the many luminaries that Doc convinced to share their skills and talent were a number of Tony Award winners, including our own Stuart Ostro and the incomparable Sir Peter Hall, founder of the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Sidney, a distinguished man of the theatre. Sidney, a distinguished man of the theatre, an extraordinary educator, and above all, an internationally admired Shakespeare scholar. Sidney fulfilled all those roles with care and inspiration. And indeed, there are a myriad of students and theatre practitioners who have benefited from his guidance. He was a valued friend, and was always a warm and welcoming presence whenever I've been in Houston. I owe him particular thanks for his support during my time as the occupant of the Wellman Chair, when I was very proud to be on the faculty roster at the School of Theatre and Dance. Sir Peter Hall.
In the spring of 1990, Doc convinced Pulitzer Prize-winning Broadway playwright Edward Albee to come to Texas and to lead the Edward Albee New Play Festival.
The Albees were writing and production classes for emerging playwrights. They included not only Houston writers, but nationally selected writers as well. When Mr. Albee was unable to return to Houston, Doc brought in another Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, the late Lanford Wilson.
In 1996, Dr. Berger was named John and Rebecca Moore's Professor of Theater. In 2003, he was inducted into the College of Fellows of the American Theater.
The sixth age slips into the lean and slippered pantaloon, spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, too short for this shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turned again to boyish pipes, and whistles in his sound.
Doc offered his students the unique opportunity to grow under the tutelage of sages while learning about the contemporary practices of professional theater. He nurtured their minds, polished their skills, and fed their spirits. Doc loved his students and his colleagues, and we love him.
I'm really sorry that I can't be at the event in person tonight, but one of the great ironies, perhaps, is that I am not able to attend because of the gift and the fulfillment at this stage of my life that Sidney Berger, Doc, gave to me. I'm working as an actor in Prague right now, which would never have happened if it hadn't been for Sidney.
I remember he gave me my first professional paying job as an actor. And instead of getting a call from the production team, he left his office and came and found me in the costume shop. And he came up to me and said, "Hey, kid, you want to do a play with me?" Doc was one of those gentle spirits. There was so many theater grades that sort of filtered through him. And knowing him, you got to know such a wealth of theater history.
Whenever we went through the theater office, he would always see Tiger and I, and he would salute us. "How you doing, sir?" And we'd salute back, even though very clearly, like, none of us really had much military bearing. But it was just one of those things. I think it was his own humorous way of having rapport with the crew.
Sid and I worked together for 30 years or more. And you know, I always could count on Sid for good counsel, for friendship, for being there when you need it, and you know, hopefully I could do the same thing for him. Yes.
Early one morning, probably 5 a.m., I was in the shop smoking a joint. The shop. I stopped and he looked at me and said, "No, you're not supposed to be doing that." And I looked at Sid and I said, "And you know, you're not supposed to be here in this room."
He loved his students as much as he loved Shakespeare. And he loved Shakespeare in a way that was, I never knew anybody who loved Shakespeare as much as he did.
Sometimes in my life today, especially working on Shakespeare, I'll be trying to figure out what something means or how a moment works on stage, either as an actor or a director. And Sidney will pop into my mind and he'll kind of be going, sure. And it's almost like he's a little conscious for me going, you need to get this right, because Shakespeare deserves it, and I deserve it, and you too.
I was out with Doc in my capacity as the academic advisor in the car, and I can't remember where we were going to live here in Houston. And he said, "Do you know where we're going?" And I said, "Well, if you give me the address, I'll try and work it out." This is before GPS, etc. Anyway, he said to me, "What if we get lost?" I said, "Doc, it will only be the blonde leading the blind." He said, "You're fired."
I carry him as anybody who leaves us at a point in our lives when they move on. Yeah, we carry them with us. And in some respects, there is this idea of them being sort of completely around you at whatever moment you need them. So you can talk to them at any time and refer to them and even ask for guidance. And Sidney's one of those people that, you know, when I feel lost and you know, if there's an acting question that I you know, how would I approach this? Sidney, I need your help, you know, and whether or not it's just something that it sparks in my imagination, I always find an answer.
This is a story that Doc would like to tell. Well, one year he went to Italy, and this was when Edward Albee was here. And so Edward went with him. Someone who was in charge got an audience with the Pope for all of the members who had come over. And Doc just scratched his head with it. He just felt like he, as a Jew, should go meet the Pope. So even though Edward tried his best to talk Doc into it, Doc said no. So when Edward got back, and the Doc was in the lobby, Doc said to Edward, "What did the Pope say?" And Edward said, without cracking a smile, "Where's Sidney?"
The final scene that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Each year, Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London presents The Globe Remembers. After a matinee in front of a full theatre, the names of important members of the Globe's extended family who have passed away are read out. The names of those dear friends are then printed on a Globe Remembers board in the Globe exhibition for a year. This year, being the 450th anniversary of Shakespeare's birth, is a very special year. Sidney Berger's name will be remembered. Here at the University of Houston, in this carnival of souls, here in the School of Theater and Dance, we remember him in many, many ways. It's not just his music stand. It's not just the fact that one of his couches from his office is still up in the hallway. And I'm betting there's a student sleeping on it right now. It's also his portrait in our hallway of the Wall of Fame, right next to the lobby that bears his name. It's also in the new scholarship that we've just established, the Sidney Berger Memorial Scholarship. And I think more than anything else, it's that Sidney is present in our hearts. In everything that we do here in this building, with the Houston Shakespeare Festival, at all times, Sidney is here with us, and we remember him. And any of you current students who are here, if you're working on any monologues, you better know your lines. Especially if it's from Shakespeare, because Sidney's president, he knows all of them. So all I'll say is that you damn well better brush up your Shakespeare.
The girls today in society in for classical poetry. So to win their hearts you must quote with these Aeschylus and Euripides.
Cost no Homer and believe me bold. Sophocles, also Sappho, unless you know Shelley and Keats and Pope. Dainty Denny's will call you a dope. The
poet of them all, who will keep them simply raving, is the poet that we call the Bard of Stratford-on-Avon. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will love.
With the wife of the British ambassador, try a crack of Troilus and Cressida. If she says she won't buy it and take it, make her take it once more as you like it.
She says that your behavior is heinous. Take her right in the Coriolanus. Brush up your Shakespeare, and they'll all cow down. Brush up your Shakespeare. Start quoting him now. Brush up your Shakespeare, and the women you will bow. If you can't be a ham in your Hamlet, they will not give a damn or a damnlet. Sign an occasional sonnet, and your lap will have honey upon it.
If your baby is pleading for pleasure, let her sample your pleasure for measure.
Your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow.
Forsooth,
And they'll all kowtow. In faith, and they'll all kowtow. skirt from Adonis. Push up your Shakespeare, and they'll all kowtow. Forsooth, and they'll all kowtow. Odds bodkins, they'll all kowtow.
Thank you all for joining us for this celebration of Sydney this evening. We have additional appetizer or desserts actually, and we have coffee as well. And I certainly hope that you will join us for more remembrances out in the lobby. Thank you so much.
so much for joining us on this very, very special occasion. First of all, I'd like to start with just a couple acknowledgments, but before I do, I want to share one really quick story. I remember the day before this lobby was open, there was a grand opening in this building. Who was there? Probably a lot of you were here. Yeah, and there was, in the rooms upstairs, it was all revealed, and I was in Doc's office, and Doc looked at me and he said, "Hey, let me give you a tour." And he walked me around this space like he was showing me the most valuable possession he'd ever owned. And the thing that I always stayed with me with Doc is he just loved this school. He loved this school with every ounce of his being. And I'm just so glad that we got a chance to bring his memory back in this very special way tonight. On that same lines, I'd like to thank, we have just a wonderful committee of people who made tonight possible. First of all, our fearless new leader, Jim Johnson, and the University of MJ, who spent tireless hours collecting the material to put the script together, bring the actors together, and then we have just a wonderful group of people. I'm gonna start with Miss Sandra Berger. I'm not gonna introduce you yet, but we have this wonderful group, a committee. I'm not gonna name you, but you know who you are. Thank you guys for the time and energy you came together. And our hopes in this was not just to bring together tonight, but to create a lasting memory of who Doc is for this community, and to let something new be birthed out of that. So one of the things that I think we all know from tonight is Doc was not just a man who accomplished things, and what we loved about him was who he was. He was a man of honor, of integrity, a man who loved deeply, and he was a man who fought for what he cared about. And may that inspiration be what carries us on. Thank you so much. And without further ado, I want to introduce, behind every great man is a great woman.
Well, before I introduce who I'm supposed to introduce, I'd like to thank some people who are here. Sidney loved his actors, loved the things, the magic they did on these stages in Miller Theater. And of course, behind Miller Theater was the beautiful board of the Shakespeare Festival. Annabella Sahakian and Gloria Acker are with us tonight. They're the people who got all the grant money from foundations, from individuals, who gave benefits, large and small, every year to cover all the costs of the festivals. Also, I'd like to thank a very special person who's here. His name is David Gottlieb. He's the former chairman of social sciences who reinvented himself and became the president and CEO of the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Pavilion in the Woodlands. As such, he was instrumental in arranging the grant from George Mitchell, which renovated the theater and which also created the Cynthia Woods Mitchell Center for the Performing Arts. Thank you, David. The person I'm going to introduce to you is very special to me. When I was thinking of some way to memorialize Sidney, I thought, well, it had to do with William Shakespeare, of course. And as you know, he created the Shakespeare Theater Association in 1992, a group that was very close to his heart. It was a group of artistic directors of theaters predominantly focusing on the works of William Shakespeare. And I thought, what greater way to select an artistic director of Shakespeare predominantly, who seemed to embody the same traits that Sidney had. He had to be a builder, a dreamer, a producer, an artistic director of unquestionable talent. So I contacted the executive board of the Shakespeare Foundation, and they agreed with me because they had been thinking of some way to honor Sidney. And the first person chosen to receive the Sidney, which they call the award given every year from the Berger Foundation, is our own Guy Roberts. But I had no idea until I read his biography. This is my cheat sheet. I have cherry-picked just some of the highlights. He's a producer, director, and actor. He was head of the Austin Shakespeare from 2001 to 2007. We were lucky to have him for several seasons in the Houston Shakespeare Festival, where he did Pericles, Andrew Aguecheek, and Dogberry. He is a member of Actors Equity, Society of Stage Directors and Choreographers, Society of American Fight Directors, and the Shakespeare Theater Association. Currently, he is the founder, CEO, and artistic director of the Prague Shakespeare Festival. Now, the Prague Shakespeare Festival, in case you can't get there, they do co-productions with Main Street Theater once a year. And when you hear about it, you best call right away because they're sold out almost instantly. If you've seen their productions of Richard III, Henry V, and Macbeth, you know what a treat it's been. And I'd like to present Guy Roberts.
Thank you. When I first heard about the Sydney, or the Sid as some people called it, several months ago, I was as absolutely speechless as I am now, and probably some of you are as well. You know, what is really amazing to me about Sidney Berger is the legacy he's left, and you all know him as Doc. I only knew him later on as Sidney because I first met him at the Shakespeare Theatre Association conferences that are once a year at every Shakespeare theatres in the UK or in North America. And I came here in 2009 only really knowing Sidney from those conferences where I was terrified of him because, you know, he was always hanging out with Fred Adams and all these other theatrical giants of the Shakespeare world, and I was incredibly intimidated by him. But I called him, it was 2009, I called him up and I said, Sidney, I'm going to be in Houston. If you have anything for me to do, I'd love to get involved. And he instantly welcomed me with open arms. And because he did that, I think Joyce and Sandy and everyone else in the Houston Shakespeare Festival did as well. And I realized that the Houston Shakespeare Festival and the University of Houston, it was a family environment. And it was all created because of Sidney. And it was a wonderful place to be. I was lucky enough to spend his 2 last years with the Houston Shakespeare Festival with him. And it's an experience that I'll never forget. And I was so happy that Sandra and Sydney were able to actually come to Prague. We brought them over to Prague, and Sydney did a workshop with our actors. And, you know, when Patrick Spudiswood from the Globe said Sidney had a little bit of Puck and Falstaff in him, I'm not sure I agree with Iago. But the Puck and the Falstaff I definitely agree with. Because there are still actors in Prague who did the workshop with Sidney and who are convinced that at Sidney's theater, you perform Shakespeare in the middle of hurricanes with 50,000 people watching on the hillside. And I love that. I love that the legend of Sidney continues to grow and grow and grow. You know, I think one thing that we can all agree on was that the spirit of generosity that Sidney showed, no doubt all of you, the way he showed me, will continue on. And when I was trying to think of a way or something to say about Sidney, it occurred to me that really Shakespeare said it best. When Hamlet is talking of his father, the ghost, I think these same words, with one slight change, can be applied to Sidney. So if you have something in your hand right now, I'd like us to all raise our glasses to Sidney. He was a man. Take him for all in all. We shall not look upon his like again. Sidney. And now it is my deep pleasure and honor to introduce Eileen Morris, who is the artistic director of the Ensemble Theater here in Houston.
Yay!
Good evening, everyone. Hi. Well, I wore my white flower for Doc Sidney Berger, and in hopes that, well, as he always is looking down on us now. So, I first met Doc many, many years ago, as most of you have as well. And it was not through Shakespeare, though, that we came together. It was through the children's program, the children's theater program, when he called the Ensemble Theater and wanted to collaborate on a project where he wanted to bring together artists and wanted to diversify the program. And so we came and we talked, and we got an opportunity to really incorporate other artists here at U of H, and we were very excited about that. And from that point on, every time I would mention his name or talk about the different collaborations, many other artists from across the world, the giants, so to speak, as was just mentioned, were there with Doc. And I was very pleased that we were able to have some type of opportunity to be able to share. And I was glad for that. When I think about Doc's love for Shakespeare and think about the everyman that he is, he was the common man that brought so many of us together from all walks of life. And I'm grateful for that, and I'm sure many of you all are as well. I think about the Shakespeare that is known in the African American community, which is August Wilson. And these words come to life for me, and I feel that they very much represent who Doc is and who he was. And this is by August Wilson. Art does not change the world, it changes people, and people change the world. So that person that Doc is and was, and as he has made his transition, his art changed the world for all of us. And that's what we have today to keep us forward. So with that, thank you, Doc, for everything that you've given to us. Thank you for the love. Thank you for the passion. Thank you for opening doors. We appreciate it immensely. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Carol Worsnop, I believe. I hope I pronounced your name right, Carol. I did? Great. You're a great friend of ours.
Hello, everyone. I'm the one that Sandy Judice tried to change. She said I couldn't talk properly. I had no right to be talking to students. My accent wasn't right, but when I tried doing takes, and she didn't like that either. She didn't like it. Dr. Berger was a wonderful person, but he influenced not only students, he influenced faculty. And I'm here tonight to bring greetings from Dr. James Pickering. Some of you may remember. Yes. He was the Dean of Humanities and Fine Arts from 1981 to 1992, at which time he took over from the previous president of the university who became ill. And then he was voted in as president and was president of the university from 1992 to 1995. Dr. Pickering has now retired and lives up in Colorado, and he couldn't be here, but he said these words. Dear Sandra, colleagues and friends, I wish I could be with you today, but at the risk of crowding the time of those who are, I'd like to add a few words in memory of someone who was, quite simply, the best. When I came to UH from Michigan State in 1981 as Dean of Humanities and Fine Arts, I knew that Sid Berger had preceded me, though I'm not sure that we ever had done more than pass pleasantries in East Lansing. At UH, Sid became one of my favorites. He was already, I soon discovered, a favorite of everyone on campus and throughout the city. In the years that followed, I found out why. It was Sidney Berger who understood far better than most what it meant to be an urban university, to serve and draw strength and vitality from the city around us. His was the paradigm that others would follow, including another wonderful friend, David Thomas. For all he did in giving the University of Houston its national, and through his work with Sam Wanamaker and the New Globe Theatre, its international reputation, and for the marvelous faculty and students he worked so hard to bring to the university, all of us will be forever in his debt. Warm, gracious, funny, and always supportive. I join you in honoring one of the really good guys, Jim Pickering. And now I'm going to introduce you to one of the students who walked into my office as a freshman several years ago when I was the academic advisor. I wasn't really sure what to do with her. She's tall, she's beautiful, and I soon found out how brilliant she was. So I was talking to her about what she was going to do when she finished her BA in theatre. I said, do you have any idea what you're going to do, Portia? She said, I don't know. I said, I think you should go to law school. And she said, why? I said, it's the same deal. You learn the script, you do the research, you get up there and you tell the story. The only difference is they pay lawyers a hell of a lot more. Well, she took my advice. She went to law school. And now she's working with the federal government, so be careful. Portia Grant.
You'll have to forgive my cell phone crib sheet. Thank you. Wow. There are a million stories that I feel like we could tell. I loved the Hamlet. That's one we heard a lot in Doc's class. There's the Nothing, right? From Lear. And just hundreds and hundreds of other stories. I feel like we could be here all night. I could tell you great stories about, I think, how Doc would threaten to shoot you up like a piece of Swiss cheese if you drop the end of a line. Or how his words from 12th Night were in my head that first time I fell in love. Lots of things that I think could be funny or pretty, but they mostly be an attempt to not let you see my ugly cry. Which wouldn't be very honest, and I feel like one of the best things that I got from Doc was that when you're doing Shakespeare and something's really complicated, you don't cover it up with a pretty lie. And if it's bad, it's bad. One of the things that he said about doing Shakespeare is that it was like climbing Mount Everest. And if he got a quarter of the way up, then that was a pretty good thing for him. And one day maybe he'd reach the top, and maybe he wouldn't. But what was important was that he was climbing Everest. And I feel like I've gotten to take that with me. And so in law school, the treacherous process, sitting in a study carrel at 3 o'clock in the morning, absolutely certain that I'm never going to understand civil procedure. I would play that recording of him telling me that climbing Everest is what's important, and that would do something for me. One of the things that I also loved that Doc said was that we were supposed to express feelings, and that Shakespeare was the way to do that. He said, Shakespeare gives you the words. When you're feeling intensely, when you're thinking intensely, and you want some way of articulating those feelings, Shakespeare gives them to you. And in articulating those feelings, he helped people live their lives in a richer and more rewarding way. That's why he gave his professional life to Shakespeare, to us. So even if it comes out with an ugly cry, here are my feelings about him. I'm amazed and know not what to say. He was a man. And I think I understand Hamlet's words in a whole new way, in a way that I couldn't when he taught them to us when we were 18 years old, because no one was ever going to die, because we were young and invincible. And now those words don't even bring any comfort, to think that I would not look upon his like again. But then it's all about me. I feel like in preparing for this and coming down here for this, it's been very, very selfish. I mistook. I want to go into his office and prompt him into one more story, telling me the same story as he did all of us so many times. Like little kids, Pam and I would go into his office and say something just to get under his skin, to have him give us one of his lectures about how theater isn't the world of make-believe, and why would you say that? Or to explain just meticulous things, or silly things sometimes. I can't figure out why this line's got 11 syllables instead of just 10. And he was always open. And it didn't matter if you were excellent at it or absolutely terrible. But watching the performance tonight, actually, I realized that Doc isn't mine. He isn't ours. To quote another great writer's words, Paul, in the book of Romans, he says, if we live, then we live to the Lord. And if we die, then we die to the Lord. So whether we live or we die, we are the Lord's. Doc wasn't ours. I mean, we got to spend some time with him, make a life with him, but he never belonged to us. He was always the Lord's. But these lessons, those little things that pop into your head at just the right moment that help you work through the text or figure out how to make your marriage work, all those little gems that he had, those are ours. those lessons, those are the blessings that we have. And so my prayer for myself and for all of you is that you hold on to those things and that you honor his memory by loving people well, by dedicating your lives to helping others live a richer and more rewarding life, to climbing Mount Everest, whatever that looks like for you. And if you fail, as long as you do it honestly, then knowing that at least you were trying to climb Everest. Thank you so much for letting me come. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you Karen Stokes, who's the head of the dance department, but more importantly, a longtime friend and colleague of Doc's.
Well, yes, I am Karen Stokes, and I think I'm going to tell everybody a story that only one person in this room knows, and it's my husband, because I practiced on him yesterday. But this is a story about towards the beginning of my time here at U of H, and I came in 1998 to head the dance program here. We had the opportunity to bring a postmodern dance choreographer for a tiny, tiny little residency in which she was going to give a studio performance, postmodern dance-ish thing. And it was over in Melcher Gym, where we had our big studio at the time. And we had 2 classes of dance students, and Sydney came over and watched it. And this choreographer, whose name is Berger Event, and she's very well known in the postmodern world of dance, she had us set up 2 video playbacks, the old-fashioned, VHS video playbacks, 2 of them, in which we had to play 2 different videos. And she then gave a speech in which part of the speech was her having to hold the paper and then get to the next paper in a very complicated manner, and she was trying to read it, and papers dropping, postmodern, and picking them up and talking some more, and it would seem very, random and yeah, performance arty. And behind her were these 2 videos playing, and one was a video with her with combat boots on and kind of army fatigues, and she was dancing. And the other was another video of her, and I should tell you that at the time of this videotaping and performance, Deborah was probably about, 67, 8, ballpark age. Okay. And not in her best dance shape, perhaps, and physicality, but still, looking good. In the second video, she was stark naked. And she was dancing full out, buns to the wind. Crotch shots, belly shots, legs flying. And the video was going, and she was talking, dropping papers, and I look over, and there's Doc. His hand over his bad eye. Looking with his one good eye very carefully. And I just thought, oh God, death to dance. We will never get another choreographer to come be a guest artist here. This is over, oh my God. So it all wrapped up, and I immediately was like troubleshooting my class the next day. How are we gonna have a dialogue? I'll give out index cards, anonymous reports, and we'll talk about it, how everybody felt about this, performance, because my students were like, so the next day, in the carousel where we all were kind of openly talking to each other, and I go to say hello to Doc, and he was like, that was the most extraordinary thing. I was absolutely amazed at the bravery of that woman, and I thought it was an exceptional performance, and I was just like, so that's that story to me just, tells you the scope of who Sydney Berger was. Because I was in a very narrow place thinking, oh, I'm the modern dance choreographer out, woo-woo out here. And he's the classical theater guy, Shakespeare, over here. And there's a gap. There's a huge gap. There was absolutely no gap. If anything, he understood the work better than I did. And I really felt I learned a lesson from him because his scope of really embracing the work and just feeling like, I know he said, I don't believe I've ever seen a woman dancing like that. And he was blown away by it, and he just, couldn't get over it. So that's my story, just one of many, many memories I have of Sydney, but that one really showed me his generosity and open-mindedness. And we did get to have another choreographer come in. So, Sydney, thank you. We love you, and we miss you so, so very, very much, all of us. Now it's my chance to introduce the last speaker. It's a gentleman who really needs no introduction, and it's my honor to welcome Jim Bernhardt.
Thank you, Karen. I think Sydney's experience with the new dancer must have prepared him for the experience that he had when I invited him when I was acting director of the Alley Theater to direct a very daring production of Terrence McNally's Frankie and Johnny and the Claire de Lune, which has about 15 minutes of absolute nudity by both of the actors, who were the wonderful Robin Mosley, one of his former students here at the university, and an actor who later became quite famous on the West Wing by the name of John Spencer. Yes. We tried to prepare our audiences for this nudity before it happened so we wouldn't have too many complaints about it. The ads in the papers all said, beware, there will be nudity. The signs in the theater said, nudity. We tried to tell people in every way, and it worked. It was a huge success. A brilliant production. And we had one letter of complaint. A woman wrote to us who said, I was outraged by seeing nudity on the stage at the Alley Theater. And she finished by saying, furthermore, if you think that was a good example of the male physique, you have another thing coming. Sydney was very special to everyone here tonight, and that's why we're all here to pay tribute to him. I'm sure Sydney would have loved and hated every minute of this tribute to him. But despite that, all of us do owe our thanks to the people who put this marvelous evening together. The inspiration for this came from Beth Sanford, who is over here, who after 25 years at the Alley Theater was Sydney's colleague both here at the university and at Stages Repertory Theater. Her idea was implemented by M.J. Emig and Laura Yosowitz. Wonderful support of Jim Johnson, the director of the School of Theater and Dance. They were aided and abetted by many people, including the wonderful talents of the people we saw on stage here tonight. And I have to mention Michael Mertz, who is at the piano here and if you haven't noticed, look at the sheet music he has in front of him. It's all on an iPad. It's incredible. And of course, they were all organized by that wonderful herder of cats, Debs Ramsey. I do hope that Sandra, the love of Sydney's life, as we were told earlier, will remember this evening for a long time as a sign of the great affection and gratitude which we all hold for Sydney and the tremendous impact he had on the lives of so many people. And now to close the evening, if you have a glass in your hand, we've had one toast already, one more toast to come. Please raise it. If you don't have a glass, pretend that you do. And raise it in a toast to Sydney Berger, the essential I should say the quintessential Shakespearean, the man with the wit of Hamlet, the comic zest of Falstaff, the courage of Coriolanus, the eloquence of Mark Antony, the mischief of Puck, the rhetorical skills of Beatrice and Benedict, the magical powers of Prospero, and every now and then, in the midst of a very tense argument in rehearsals, just a teeny bit of the ruthlessness of Richard III. Here's to Sidney with our gratitude and love, and thanks to you all.